sometimes when I'm live streaming, I will get people who say, hey Charmer, how do I change the color of my deck names? How do I get icons like you have for yours? If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's all of these fancy looking decks right here. We've got Barrier Bros and Daring Legacy and Tremors, and they all have different color names along with an icon from the game. And normally, if you make a deck in the game, it looks like Dreadros here. It's just kind of an off-white, gets a little bit brighter when you mouse over it, but that's it. So I thought I would do a guide to show you how you can make your deck names look a little bit more fancy in the interface. That's what this video is going to be. But first, I'm going to take a brief moment to say if you're new, consider subscribing. Make sure you guys are hitting the like button because it's free and it helps me out. And with that out of the way, we're going to go and make one of my favorite lists, Lulusives have a fancy deck name. This is a list that I sadly don't have an updated YouTube video for, actually. This is a bit of a reminder that I should do this one next. But Lulusives here deserves to look much cooler than this boring kind of, again, off-white looking name here. So we're going to jump into the deck editor. This is actually where you do it, and you do it with a little bit of coding, but don't let that intimidate you. It's not difficult. And if you've done any sort of HTML at all, it's going to look really similar. It's not actually HTML. It is something from Unity. Legends of Runeterra is built in Unity, but it functions essentially the same way. So we're going to start by changing the color. So you start with an open tag, which is this symbol here. If you're not familiar with coding, this symbol here is shift and normally your comma icon, but instead of you shift, you do that. And you're going to type the word color because after all, we want to change the color. And we're going to say color equals because we are setting the color. And I'm going to come over here and copy and paste a hex code real quick. This is a hex code. This determines a color in coding. Now, if you don't know how to find these, do not panic. You can go to Google right now and Google hex code picker or color hex code picker, and you'll get free resources where you can use sliders, generate your color, whatever. Also, in this case, I'm very specifically choosing what is known as Targan Purple because if you Google either League of Legends or Runeterra color codes, there's actually resources on that. So this is specifically Targan Purple we're changing it to. So you do the open tag, you say color equals, you set it to the hex code you want, and then you use a closing tag, which you guessed it is exactly the opposite symbol for the open tag. So the minute I put this in, you're going to see my color change to purple. And anything I type after this now is also purple. It's just saying that, hey, in this deck name, we're setting the color. Now, it is worth noting your deck names have a character limit, and even though you can't see that color part anymore, it's just gone. You guessed it, it counts towards your character limit. Now, it is also worth noting that it's missing, it's gone, and you kind of can't get rid of it, but it's always still there. So if I get rid of the name, but I start typing again, right, Lulusives, it's still going to be purple because it's just kind of doing that thing behind the scenes. Now, that's how you change the color. I'm going to talk a bit about pitfalls again here in a moment, but we want to finish making this one fancy. So next up, we're going to add one of those icons. Now, in the interface, those are called sprites. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can add them. So we're going to start with that open tag again. And we're going to say sprite equals because just like with the color, we're saying, hey, this thing is going to be a sprite and we're going to set it. Now, in this case, there are values in the game, in the engine that Riot has like purposefully associated with certain icons. And so we've used the Targan Purple. Let's now add the Ionia symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and say 17. I'll talk about how to find out the values in just a little bit, but we're going to just close it, and then suddenly you have the icon. And so that is how you change the colors. That is how you add the icons. And then once you're done, you hit done. It'll ask you if you want to save your changes, and it's nice and pretty looking here. Now, you'll also notice, right, Lulusives was down here and it jumped up. That's because technically the ordering for your deck names is alphabetical, but the actual open tag that starts for color, because that's in front, that is above A in the alphabet for ordering here. And so Lulusives is considered above Dreadros now because of that hidden missing open tag thing. Sure, you have more questions. Let's go ahead and go to a new deck. And I want to talk about a couple of other things because, again, there's a character limit and we have to keep that in mind because You can't delete the color portion once you have set it. So if I go ahead and I say like color equals, and we'll copy and paste in the target purple again, right? Again, it's hidden, it's missing, but those characters count. So I can type in a bunch of T's, and then eventually I'll hit my character limit and it'll stop, right? If I want to get rid of the color purple, even if I delete everything and then I start retyping, you can see purple still there. Now I can instead say color equals, and I want to set it to white. Now, if you're not familiar, white for hex codes is just F 6 times, but you can also shorthand it to 3, and it just kind of knows that you are auto repeating it. So we can do the pound sign with FFF, and when I close this, it's going to change it back to white. Interesting thing to note though is that that first purple one is still hidden. So yes, my stuff is white now, right? But the characters for purple and then the characters for white are still actually taking up space in your deck name. You can't see them because they disappear, but they're there. So what's actually happening is it's saying set everything purple, and then after that you're saying set everything white, and that purple thing is still there, but the white is just overriding it. So right now the order of operations for my deck name is make sure it's purple, then make sure it's white, and then everything we're typing now is now white. And that does start to matter because, again, you can see now I'm not even hitting the end, right? If I hold down F, I'm not getting very far with my deck name. And if I go back again and I say, okay, actually, you know what? I really liked that purple, right? Like let's jam the target purple back. So now we're back, but you'll notice if I hold down F, that's as far as we go because it's hidden in your deck name. As far as I have been able to figure out with just my own personal testing here, there's no way to get rid of those color settings once you set them. So if you run into this problem, you have to delete your deck. So the only way, let's go ahead and we'll save this invalid deck. The only way that you can get rid of this new deck, is it even, yeah, it did set it. Ooh. All right, so the only way you can get rid of this is by deleting it, because even if I come in here and I edit, all that stuff is still saved there. As I said, even if you delete, like you can hold down backspace, you can hit delete, you can do all the things, still going to be purple, you're still going to have the limit. So if you're making fancy deck names and you make a mistake, it is worth noting that you will probably just have to recreate your deck. The easiest way to do that is to pop out, you do the old share and then import deck option, and then once you've imported the new deck, your deck will still maintain all of the cards, but the deck naming settings will then have been reset. So like a great example here, if I grab Lulusives and I do an import deck, see here it's imported deck, we import it, we come down to imported deck, it's still the off-white, we can come in this way, and then we can make the changes here. Like we are back to having our big massive character limit. So all you have to do if you do make a mistake and you are realizing, okay, I set it to the color I didn't want, or whatever the case may be, you just have to remember that you can save it as is, pop out, grab your deck code, because that's just dictating the cards, not anything to do with the deck name. Do the import, and then you can start from scratch on making your fancy deck names. Other things that you may have had questions about when I was doing the run through are related to knowing the sprites. So obviously we've got the old color thing here. So again, just for an example, let's go ahead and grab that Targan purple and say, okay, we are on this new deck and we've got this cool Targan purple for our deck name. Helps if I know how to spell. And now we want to add one of those sprites. Now before I did sprite equals 17 for the Ionia one, and you might have been saying to yourself, well, Charmer, how do I know what all the symbols are? And the actual answer is you kind of have to just guess. And I know that that is sucky, but the good news is there's only around 20 symbols in the game right now. And the reason that you have to guess is because they change at times. You can go actually online, look up Reddit threads where other people have done this exact same sort of thing that I have, and they've tried to catalog what the sprite numbers are. But when a new expansion comes, or when new releases come, or when new keywords are released or regions are added, those values for the sprites change. So sometimes what you have to do is you have to do something like type the word sprite equals with your open tag, and then you copy it, and then you can kind of like speed round through, and you can say like, I want to know what sprite 10 is. Okay, that's the Bilgewater region. I want to know what sprite 13 is. Oh, that's actually the burst speed icon, because again, you can do region icons, you can do some of the like card icons. It's not just keyword abilities, but burst speed is there. You can say, hey, you know, what is 15, for example? Oh, it's the wild card icon. Yes, even the wild card icon is there as well. And you can even find some of the icons that are on the cards that don't necessarily have even a name, right? Like we know that these arrows here represent champions and, you know, their progress towards leveling up. So that's there as well. But you do have to realize that you're going through the numbers. And when you hit a number that is at the end of the designations, right? So 21, we got the landmark symbol, but let's say we want to go like wild. We'll say 50, right? Are there 50 sprites? Well, once you enter the closing tag, you'll see nothing happens. So you'll find the end of them, but you need to know that they do change kind of every patch. And that also means if you use the number values for your deck names, if a new patch or a new expansion drops and they change the values, it will still be set to your value designation, and as such, the icon might change. So let's go ahead and save this for now. Elusives here, we used a value for this, and I believe it was 17. So if when the Ruination event or the Sentinels event or whatever it's called kicks off, they decide that actually they're introducing a new icon, and that's going to take the spot of 17. Ionia as a region, that's going to be 16 now. This will no longer show Ionia because this one is set to a value. So the next natural question is, well, Charmer, how do I avoid that? I don't want to have to do this every patch. And I agree with you. So besides just setting sprite equals a value, the last important piece here as far as making fancy deck names goes is you can do things by name as well. Because again, as you're going through the values, you need to know that not every sprite in the game actually has a number value associated with it. Some of these you can only do by name. And the way you do that is you come back here to sprite, but instead of doing equals and then typing a value, we give ourselves a space and we say name. And we're going to set the name equal to something. So in this case, for Targon Purple, I want to say, actually, I want the elusive icon. So we're going to say sprite name equals, and then we just type the word elusive. And when we enter this closing tag, it's now the elusive icon. Now, the good news is when you do this for your icons, unless they just change the actual name of the ability, this is likely going to stay the same every patch, every expansion, because you are designating the name. Now, the drawback or the trade-off, if you will, is that it takes up a lot more characters in your deck name, because again, that looks like one little character, that icon, but it is actually all of this plus the closing tag, right? So this all here, all of those characters are taking up spots in our deck name. And you can tell that because after we do this, let's say I wanted to add more, right? I can't. I'm actually at the end. So sometimes when you're making your deck names, you'll realize, okay, I'm actually at the end of my rope. So if I wanted to change something else, I need to delete this and come back here and add it on this end or whatever, or you have to move things around. That's the drawback, right? You set your color, you give your deck name, or you add your icons, and then you kind of figure out what your character limit is. It also means that you're not likely to get 2 icons in your deck name unless you use the sprite values, because having to do something like this twice is problematic, right? I can only do it once, even with my copy paste tricks, but I can do this. Now, it's also worth noting that you can just leave your decks as icons as well. So if you just want to list your decks by region pairings, then that's fine. Yes, we have the icons on the decks themselves, but maybe you just want the region pairings to be there, something like that. It is also worth noting as well that here, there's no color changes, even though I had that color in, and that color change is still taking up character limit. So it is possible using sprite values to fit in 3 icons. But again, that's taking up a lot of your character space in the deck names. Now, unlike the colors, your icons, when you delete them, do delete all of the text associated. So you'll notice here, if I delete the Ionia symbol, I can go back to at least putting in some extra characters. So icons are different from the color setting. The color setting happens up front and then it just kind of disappears, but it is still eating away at your character limit. And so that is how you do colors. That is how you do icons. And hopefully I have at least warned you or prepared you for the fact that if you use values, you have to know that they are going to change. And again, understanding that they are kind of like not even really in an order, right? Like if I do this, you can start with 1, which I believe is Shadow Isles, if I remember correctly. And then it immediately goes away from region, right? We get these arrows, and then I think it goes to slow speed, right? So it's not even like, oh, okay, I know that like the first 10 are always regions. It's just kind of random values, and they don't always stay the same. So you could, I guess, if you really wanted to keep track of them yourself, set up some sort of spreadsheet so that you can quickly reference it, but just know that there is a chance those values will be changing over time. And if you want to be certain, then you'll have to use the names. And then, as I said before, there are some that just don't have a sprite value. I think lurk, or at least the lurker icon is one of them. So for that one, just as an example, you have to use the name. Helps if I get my fingers to work properly. So if you want this really cool shark fin, or, you know, as I like to think of it, a wizard's hat, if you want the cool wizard's hat, you've got to use the actual sprite name, because right now there's no value. Now it might be something that they're adding later, because again, they make changes, but you've got to sacrifice a lot of characters in your character limit for your deck name. So that is it for the guide. I hope this helped you. I probably could have cleaned this up a bit if I had prepared a script, but I felt like walking through the actual process is maybe a bit more beneficial, because this is very similar to what I do. Is, you know, I decide, okay, what do I want my color to be? I set the color first, and then usually I come up with whatever my somewhat witty deck name is. Like, let's be honest, they're not turbo witty. You know, I'm naming the underground thing Tremors, and you know, the mechanized Moon Boy list is Mecha Moon, blah blah blah. But I set the color, I do the deck name, I decide, okay, what kind of icon fits for what I'm trying to do, and then I go from there, and that's it. So again, I really hope this helped you. Thank you for watching. Until next time, may you walk on warm sands.